Vincent, welcome to the show, man.
What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Doing well. We've been chatting for almost 30 minutes already, just getting into life and business and everything else in between, man. But I'm excited to really share you with my audience. You're somebody I've known for a number of years now. I think I originally met you when you came to my event in 2019, right?
Your first event was when, me and a bunch of friends came out, made the drive, and absolutely loved it. And was just, incredibly impressed with how you put, especially for a first event, you wouldn't have known it. So it was a good start.
Dude, that's a huge compliment, because I know that you're somebody who goes to a number of events and you build your network a lot that way. And we'll get into all that stuff and how you've been able to build great relationships. But it was really cool to meet new people that I vibe with at a certain level. And I think that's the power of events, right? Like, that's why I go to them still. That's why I host them, because bringing people together and creating opportunity for people to collaborate and do cool things is game changing, right? And that's kind of where you succeed in life.
Well, yeah, to your event, for example, for you to be able to spend your time doing a podcast, having relationships, knowing, the Chuck Balsamos of the world, right? Who I didn't even know until I saw him on stage. And then to meet him and for him to become a good friend of mine. He actually, I don't know if you remember, he gave that tarantula away at your conference. The tarantula is still alive. And my son, my 16-year-old son, is making money because he now brings tarantulas to events, and kids and parents pay him to do that for birthday parties. So literally he built a business off of something that he got from your conference. That never would have happened by just kind of being online and scrolling through Facebook, like taking the time, spending the money and the time to go to these different things. I find it an incredibly valuable part about how we build a network and relationships. There's no way that I would get those people for 2 days to hang out with, undistracted by everything else going on. That's why COVID, was bad in so many ways, but I was so missing the live events to be able to hang like that.
Yeah, man. And I think a lot of people were, and now we've gotten to a point where people have forgotten. I'm glad we're having this conversation. By the way, this is not a way to sell tickets to my event. By the time this airs, the ticket sales are over. So this is not a way to sell tickets to my event. But the reality is, like, it's really important for people to be reminded how powerful in-person human connection is.
Totally. And it's being lost. It's being lost. And not only is it being lost, but because of COVID, people don't know how to communicate the same way anymore. I have these conversations, and I can be kind of, I'm a New York Italian. Like, I'm going to tell you how I just can't help it. But the amount of people that can just ramble on about themselves and not ask questions and not read the room and not know that people's eyes are glazing over. That's a good way to lose connection, to lose relationships, because they're so focused on themselves that they don't even think about is this a real conversation going back and forth? And I think that almost has to be reestablished back into society, because for so long of people not doing it, people have gotten worse at it.
Yeah. I think that's the truth. And admittedly, I think I've gotten worse at it. I think just out of repetition, right? You live in Florida now, so there's not so much out of repetition for you. But I've gotten worse at, in a weird way. And it's funny that I'm admitting this, because I'm hosting an event in 2 weeks as of this conversation. But I've gotten less excited to go to events. Like, I think naturally it just happens, right? We become complacent in the life that we're living.
Totally. I'm the same way. We do live events at times. We do smaller ones, smaller than you. But like, I remember the first couple, almost like I was in high school going to a dance just nervous. Like, what's the conversations? It never used to be that way. If I bought a conference to a different, I'm ready. I bought a ticket. I'm ready to go. The last year or so, I'm like, and then after going to a few, I'm like, okay, it's all back. Everything's fine. But yeah, I think the whole world has gone through that, and it's going to take some time and some effort to get back to normal.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that, Growth Now Summit Live is a catalyst for some people to be reminded, right? And then they can go explore other events and do more networking and reconnect with humans on a level. Anyway, that's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is about you and everything you've been able to do. And you came out with a new book, and we're going to get to that. But why don't we start with, who is Vincent today, right? Because I think your journey is really fascinating to me. So let's talk about who you are today, and then we'll figure out how you got there.
Well, to begin with, Vincent's a way different person than he was 10, 20 years ago. So the funny thing is, like, when people re-engage with me from my past, they're like, I don't know that guy. Because I had to change a lot. I was a, hard driving, get what I need to get. I'm not going to be stopped. I see it a lot in entrepreneurship. Like, just get what you deserve. And I had a chip on my shoulder, and I was insecure, and I went after it. I wasn't really concerned with who I had to kind of step on to get there. And even in the photography world, it's like elbow to elbow. When you're in an event, you can't miss the shot. So there's not a lot of collaboration. There's not a lot of helpfulness that goes on. And that built into my life. that built into, hey, what do I need to get? So who I am now is really, I came to the point where every dream, at least from my level, that I wanted to get, I had gotten to. I had done the things.
Mm-hmm.
And the saddest part was how empty it was when I got there. It wasn't like I got to kind of pound my chest. Look at what I did here. Look what I did there. And look at this. And in the end, I kind of became like a circus monkey. Like, tell us this story. Tell us that story. But nobody really liked me for who I was, at least in my opinion. People tell me differently, but to me, I was kind of just, I was about the accomplishments and I was about the story. I wasn't about the person. I wasn't about the person that like people would want to be around, the helpful one that would kind of bring people together. So these last 5 years, 10 years have been transformational for me, even in terms of what's in the book, like to become that type of person. I wrote the book. It's not about me. The beginning is because it's all the problems, but the people that I talk to, this is, character and curiosity and connection and collaboration. Like these people that do it well, they're the world's their oyster. They have everything being put together for them. People want to refer them. People want to talk about them, share their stuff. I'm like, how did they get to do that? But I've got to grind for everything. And I've got to kind of piss people off to get there. Not how I want it to be. So who I am today is way different. Father, we have 3 sons, we homeschool, we travel a ton, and we kind of live life on our terms. And it was a hard battle, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah, dude. And I love that you share that because I live off of, and I talk about this all the time on the podcast and on social and all the things, but like I'm a give first person, right? And I give unconditionally. And that's every person I come in contact with. I end almost every single conversation I have with, let me know how I can support you. And it's a genuine offer to say, hey, if I have the ability to support you, I will. And then I go and do it. And that's what's changed the game for me. Like when I look at the speakers, and this is what you're talking about, when you build real human connection, things happen for you, right? So when I look at the speakers for my event this year, I actually did the math on how much they should all get paid if I was paying their fees. $300,000. Wow. It would cost me $300,000 just in speaker fees to host my event. But I was able to build strong relationships. And they're all doing it, and humble to say it, but they're all doing it for free. And that was really about, for me, like it was just the idea of building strong relationships, right? And being true to who I am and not trying to get anything out of it. And very, very nervous when you make the big ask. I remember asking Fabio to speak at my event. I needed somebody, I'd helped him out with a couple things and made some introductions, and we became real friends. And I remember calling him, I texted him and I was like, hey man, do you have some time later this week? I have a question for you. And I just remember how nervous I was to do this. And he goes, yeah, he goes, call me right now. And I was like, oh, and I was like hoping that I could prepare. And I was so nervous, and he said, yes. He's like, well, anything you need, I'll do. But that's the power of human connection. And that's what you're talking about in this book, right?
It's exactly it. There's a story, I was for those that don't know, I was a professional sports photographer for over 20 years. Shot World Series, Super Bowl, you and I wrestling. I worked for the World Wrestling Federation back when it was WWF.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't say WWE. That's not real to me. WWF is where my life was. That was back in the Attitude Era when it was just exploding. And so I would make these connections. And there was this one time where I met this guy, and it was at a wedding. And so we connected because we're both Mets fans. We're both suffering New York Mets fans. And made this connection. He worked for ESPN, and I'm shooting sports, around the country. My goal was to shoot in every stadium and arena in the country to make a book out of it. It's going to be called One Shot. Still kind of working on it, but slowly because I'm not shooting as much. But I had shot like over 140 stadiums. They keep building new ones, so it'll never end. So he knew this. He worked for ESPN as a producer, and we kept in touch. Well, about 2 years later, he messaged me, and he was like, hey, I'm in New York City. I know your brother works on Broadway somewhere. He goes, anything you could do, we're looking to go to a show. I said, hey, he works on Jersey Boys. Let me text him, see if he can get you a backstage pass. I text him. 2 minutes later, Steve gets back to me. He goes, yeah, just here's the stage door. Tell him to come here. We'll hook him up. So they brought him in. They gave him like the full tour. They got to meet all the actors. They were completely blown away, right? Yeah. Didn't think anything of it. So now we kept in touch, maybe every 6 months, not every day, not every week. 5 years later, the Miami Heat, LeBron James on the Heat, right? Now he's the biggest star in the world at that point, and they're going for their 3rd straight championship. And I want an image of him in the playoffs going for the championship. And I can't get a press pass. Every organization that I work for, like that is the hardest ticket, can't get it, tried everything. So I'm frustrated. I'm like, this is not going to happen. Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals, 2 days to go. And I'm like, I see on Twitter that Brian is the guy that we got into the Broadway show. He's in Indy working for ESPN. I saw it on Twitter. So I sent him a message. I'm like, why not? I'm like, hey, any chance you need another photographer for game 6? Within 2 minutes, there'll be a press pass at will call. You could stay with me if you want. And I was like, what? So I drive to Indianapolis. I get to the arena. We hang out. We have dinner, just chatting. Literally, national anthem happens. I am 2 feet from LeBron James. I get the picture that I've been dying for, right? We finish up. We wrap up. We're leaving. We start walking out of the arena. And I was like, thank you so much for doing this. And he looked at me and he said, dude, I owed you. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I never forgot how you did that for me back in New York. That meant so much to us. So I've been waiting for a reason to pay you back. And when you asked me that, I knew how I could pay you back. So I thought I'm doing this big ask that I'm like trying to get something. He'd been wanting, that's your Fabio story. You've done so much for him that when you ask, you're thinking, oh, I really can't pay him for this. He's like, I want to help you out. But when you build those relationships, when you build that deep from a really understanding and caring point that goes weeks, not weeks, but years, and you give without expectation and you stay in touch, doors open like you would never get if you just go out and try to sell or ask for something.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I love that this has become your journey, like going from somebody who was like, how do I get mine, to how do I help others get theirs? What was the big shift for you? Was it that moment?
It was, no, there wasn't. I wish I could say there was, and maybe I need therapy to find it, but there wasn't like there wasn't this one moment where like this, the sky opened up and it wasn't that. It was just a slowly, like, I don't like who I am. I don't like, this whole thing. And we have 3 boys. They're now 16, 14, and 10. What kind of example am I setting? Are they seeing me be the person that I really want to be? So to be able to shift to that. So I'm sure there was a moment, but just honestly, it's the people that I met. It's the people that I looked at and go, dude, everybody just loves them because of who they are. They love me because of what I did. Mm-hmm. They love them for who they are. And I remember just being like, how do I become that type of person? And, I'm 50 years old now. It's such an amazing journey to be able to say in my 40s, I can really shift that. And it's not like I came from, things were going poorly. Things were going well. I had to really shift and say who, as opposed to what do I want to become? Like, who do I want to be as a person? And now, I can tell you, it's a different world in so many ways.
Yeah. It's funny. You talk about being a photographer for the WWF and obviously doing all these other sports things. And I think that's how you and I originally really got to talking, because we started talking about wrestling. And I'm not saying you're still a wrestling fan, but when anybody knows about wrestling, immediately you're like, we're best friends. Like, we're going to be friends. As a matter of fact, 4-time Emmy winner Chris Van Vliet, who's speaking at my event, has a YouTube channel with like 400,000 subscribers, and that it's all wrestling. It's him interviewing wrestlers. And that's how we became friends, because I subscribed to his YouTube channel, didn't know it, but he listened to my podcast, and we had connected, and that was that. But it's really that moment of like human connection. It's about finding, how can I connect with this person on a level? Do you cover that in your book at all? I haven't read it yet. I'm excited to, but let's talk a little bit about the strategy or the ideas behind how do you find the commonality in order to build rapport?
What I found was this. I'm in a similar world with you, podcasting, membership sites. And what I find is so many people look to build something. They want to write a book, they want to start a podcast, they want to build a membership, and they go, I'm going to do this. And it's a great idea because they went to some, YouTube channel and said, this is the idea that I'm going to do. And the amount of people, Justin, that I see that write a book within 2 weeks, it's got like 5 reviews on Amazon. Their mom bought it. Nobody cares. And they go, well, that doesn't work. And they quit. And then they go, or they say, I really gotta make this thing happen. So I'm gonna go collaborate with somebody. And they call you up and they go, hey, I want to be on your podcast. And you go, I don't even know you. Like, I can't have you on it's relationships, right? Yeah. So then they go, okay, well, I obviously need to connect with people like this. So they try to connect, but they generally do it very selfishly. They do it in terms of, hey, what can I get out of this? Sometimes it's vain as generous, but it's really like, what's my angle? You scratch my back, I scratch yours. There's a lot of that goes on. And so then they go, okay, well, the connecting isn't work. And then they go backwards and they're like, they're not curious. They're not asking questions. They are not, I talk about all the time in the very beginning of my book, your character. It starts with character, and it starts with your generous goals going above your selfish goals. Meaning we all have selfish goals, right? We all want to sell at the conference. We all want to have a best-selling, like a top podcast. But is it about you getting what you want? Or is it about you bringing something that's going to add so much value that's going to bring your selfish goals? Meaning there's nothing wrong with having that beautiful house, but what are you doing to add value above what you need so that it then flows down from how you're helping? So if you can help enough other people, it's the Zig Ziglar line. You help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. So it's generous goals. So I flip this around with this book, meaning I don't want to hear about what you're creating. I don't want to hear about your podcast. What is your character like? And we go through that whole thing. And then, okay, that's foundational, as is your curiosity. The people that are curious, what the statement is: questions, open minds; statements, closed minds. Robert Kiyosaki said it. You can build great relationships, rapport, and trust by being curious. So the second part is all about curiosity. And when you're curious, you ask questions, you know what other people want. Like you know how to help people. You don't know how to help people if you're not curious about them. Then we go into connection and a whole part about that. And then the best part to me is collaboration. When you have character and you've trust and you've proven that, and you have curiosity and people love you because you ask questions about them because nobody else does, and you build a good connection, now you can collaborate. You can collaborate as a podcast guest. You can collaborate at a conference. You can collaborate in business. And when you can collaborate like that, the last part of the book is creation. That I say that for last instead of the beginning. So I don't want to hear about the podcast of the book until this part, because when you go and do this and you put the book out, you put the podcast out, and you have these things in place, all these people are going to support you, or at least a lot of them are. And it's going to make your success so much easier. So it's like, I kind of saw over and over again how people did it backwards. So I wanted to flip it around and go from the core of it, foundational, and then relational, and then exponential, which is the creation. The growth is unlimited when you can do these things first. So that's kind of the overview of it.
Dude, I love it. And it's so true. And it's so funny that you're talking about like, hey, like people try and pitch you for your podcast. Dude, I get pitched 30 to 40 times a day now. Like, and it's getting worse and worse, whether it be through messages or through emails or whatever. And very much you can tell a lot of them don't know anything about me. They don't know anything about my show. They don't know anything about my audience, which to me is the most important part of being a guest, is like, how do I add value to the audience? And all these things. And so very, very rarely do I accept these pitches unless I'm really intrigued by the person, right? Like I've gotten some big name guests have been pitched to me, like Sean T or Drama from the show Robin Big, like they've been pitched to me. And so of course I'm going to say yes, because I'm intrigued by those people. But a lot of times it's a big no. And so you talk about, hey, don't ever lead with that. And this is a perfect example. I literally said to you when we hopped on here, what did I say? I go, I've been waiting for the right moment to have you on the podcast. You had never asked me. We've never had a conversation pertaining to it. But when you create those relationships and you stay in touch and I see what you're doing, all of a sudden we go, okay, now's the right moment. And I saw you had a book that just came out and I was like, let me ask him. Let's see if he's open to coming on.
It's so funny because that literally mirrors the book in terms of the whole thing, because, of course I'd love to be on your podcast and I listen to your podcast, but it's like, I didn't feel like it's my place. And I know a lot of people say, no, you got to be aggressive and ask. But I'm like, I think if Justin wants to have me on the show, he's going to ask me. If he finds value for his audience, he's going to ask me. And even with this book launch, everybody's like, what's the big launch plan? I'm like, there is no big launch plan. You want to know what the launch plan is? It's a 5-year launch. I'm not sure if you know who John Rulin is from Giftology, but he talks about it all the time. 5 years. So my whole thing is, it doesn't matter now. Just keep doing the work daily. Do things, 5 things a day, 5 days a week, and it will continue going. Whether you could have asked me in 3 years, you could have asked me in 4.5 years. It's all part of it. And every time you do it that way, it's a real organic relationship and conversation as opposed to something forced. And if you can continue, you're always playing the long game and you're always thinking, okay, I'm having patience. Patience and persistence is a big part of the way I go about things. If I'm patient, this stuff happens, but also I have to be persistent at the same time. You've got to keep moving. But I think this whole thing is, I think people do it so wrong because like, oh, I got to get mine. I got to get what I get. And when you do that, maybe you get something quickly, but you will turn a lot of people off, even though they won't ever tell you. And that's the problem. You will turn them off, but they won't tell you to your face. So you don't even know that you're turning people off. And that's a big problem.
Yeah, dude. And I'm just so glad you're sharing all this stuff, because when you think about it, okay, a 5-year launch, right? That doesn't, you might not get the fancy, I don't know if you have yet, but you might not get the fancy title of Amazon bestseller or all the things that people chase with all this stuff, right? Now, did you get it, by the way?
Well, let me show you something. I don't know if you've seen the cover of the book. Is this, I don't know if it's on video. Look at what it says. It is, yeah. Look at what it says in the bottom of the book. Can you read that?
Non-best-selling author. I love it.
I'm the only one. I'm the only one in the world because everybody's an Amazon bestseller. I actually wrote about it in the book about it's such a load of crap. And yes, just privately, it made it. And I did a screenshot as a joke, but I didn't post about it. I don't care. It's such a, like, you can buy your way onto everything. Everybody does. Have a group of people buy it at this moment so we can get bestseller. Literally pay $50,000, not a joke, to go to these agencies that have millions of books in the people in rotation, and they get 20,000 people to buy it for $1, will never read the book, and now you're Wall Street. It's a load of crap. It's a joke. So I said, you know what? Everybody's a bestseller. I'm going to be the only non-bestseller. I'm going to put it on the book. So,
dude, I love it. And it's funny to kind of let everybody know. I have a friend who openly talks about a book that he wrote, and he became a #1 Amazon bestseller, and he sold 42 copies. Yep. So understand that it's an algorithm game that people are playing just so they can have that title. And I believe the value of a book is actually adding value to other people. It's not about how many are sold. It's not about, like you said, okay, 99-cent book that nobody actually ends up reading. No, I want people to buy it who are actually going to read it to make an impact in those lives, whether I sell 5 of them or 5 million of them, right? And then if you look at a 5-year launch goal, like, you can get there. And I think, you mentioned John Ruhlin. He's been on the podcast years ago. He was on the podcast, and we had connections through Cutco because I was a Cutco guy, and obviously that's where he started, which is why there's a knife on the book. And then the other Cutco guy who happens to sell a couple of books, Hal Elrod. I knew both of them back when I was 19 years old.
Is that right?
And
very cool.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, actually. So Hal is a great example of this. When he wrote The Miracle Morning, nobody bought it at first. And what ended up happening were the people who ended up buying it talked about it. And then they told people about it. They added value, told people about it. And that's how it's become, I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe it's actually the most sold self-published book of all time.
I'm not surprised. I think John told me, or somebody told me, I think, and I could be speaking out of turn, I think that book makes about $1 million a year.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
But John's example, the 5-year plan, didn't come from him. It came from Hal. Because Hal told him it took about 5 years to get momentum for that book.
Yeah.
So if the best-selling self-published book of all time followed that example, why don't we follow that example? And that's but he did the work. He went on podcasts. He talked about it. He shared. He wrote about it. He blogged. It wasn't about launch day. It's not about going to the New York City Marathon and charging out of the gate and jumping up and down cheering. Had a great launch. Who cares? Did you finish the race? Did you make it 26.2 miles and do the work? And so that's my excitement. So every one of these conversations, every single book sale, every review, it's all just amazing because it all just is going to build on the next one. It's not about what happens this week. That's why I'm so relaxed about this. It was the building of it was stressful, writing the book, the editing. This is just now fun, but I'm going to work my butt off, but it's fun. It's not about labels. It's not about goals. So I get, the launch party is May 2nd, 2027, not May 2nd, 2022. That's the way that I look at it.
But I love it. Now, I'm intrigued why, like, 5 years. So a lot of times what people look at when they're selling a book, or why it's such a rush, is they go, here's my narrative for the next year. Right. So to commit to something for 5 years, like Hal Elrod for life is the Miracle Morning guy. No matter what he does, he could go write 10 other books. He'll always be the Miracle Morning guy. That's just what it is, right? It's like The Secret and all those other things. So with that being said, why, and you've written other books in the past, why is this the baby? Why is this message your thing that you're going, this is me?
That's a great question. And I love this. And this is the question, the challenge, because I'm an ADHD entrepreneur to the core. Nobody ever told me that in school. I just knew I was different. I knew I was weird. I knew like literally just in graduate, when I was in high school and I was in the guidance counselor's office, she said, what do you want to do for a living? And I said, I have no idea, but I don't want to wear a tie like that guy, the guy sitting next to her. And she said, no, I'm serious. I said, no, I'm serious. I do not want to do that. And they never asked me what I wanted. They never asked me what I was interested in. I wish they would have. But really coming down to, I've been such an ADHD entrepreneur that, like, I start something, I do really well with it, and then I get bored with it. Yeah. And then what's the next thing? I did it with my last book. Freelance to Freedom launched, had a great jump. And then 2 months later, I'm kind of like, eh. But the way John Ruhlin said it, like, this is like you put your life into these books. You write it sometimes I wrote 3 years for this book. Are you really going to write 3 years on something and then give it 2 months of trying and then go on to the next thing? Yeah. So when I wrote this book is so me. This is the message that I want to get out there. And it's the first time ever I've created something where I said, I could talk about this for 50 years because I think it's that important. And that's where it comes from. I think, because I'm ADHD and I reserve the right to switch, chasing the squirrel. But I think this is the message to stick with that I really want to keep. And the other thing is, when you do it for 5 years, Andy Andrews talked about this, you learn more about your book after you write it than when you wrote it. Mm-hmm. Because people keep asking you questions and then you need to explain it. And you go, oh, that doesn't make much sense. I need to kind of do it. And you write blogs about it. And you go, oh my God, I want to be the expert in this topic. And I'm starting, but I'm not there yet. I'm going to add a lot more to learn. So that's why I don't want to do the next thing. I want to get better at this. And this is going to be the biggest challenge ever for me, because I've never stuck with anything more than 4 years without getting bored at it.
I love it. We'll have you on the podcast 5 years from now. We'll have the same exact conversation, but at a higher level as you've gone on.
And I just hope you don't be like, you totally stopped after 3 months. And I'm still having you on. I'm going to chastise you, but you stopped. You said you weren't.
No, man, but you can feel the passion. And I think it's easy for you to say, okay, I'm committed to this because this is the life you live. This isn't one message. This isn't one tactic. This isn't to start something. This is about a way of life, right?
Yes, it's very simple and it's extremely complicated. The framework is simple. Those 5 things, everything within it to do it and to do it consistently and to, get a response from somebody that pisses you off and not be resentful and not lash out like you might have done 20 years ago and really kind of think, well, what are they going through right now? What benefits are going to do this? Like relationship based. Dan Miller says this, in the middle of the night, if you needed $5,000, how many people do you have that you can call that would give it to you? And he's like, you should have one of those people for every year of your life. And when he told me that, I was kind of like, ugh, I don't know if I'm keeping up. I don't know if I'm keeping, but that's relationship building. And that's if I'm close to somebody and they go, hey, Ben, whatever happened, I need $5,000, 3:00 in the morning, and I love you, boom, right there. How many of those people? So I'm starting, and I wrote this book, but man, Justin, I've got such a long way to go to become this person, and that's an amazing challenge to take.
Dude, I love it, man, and I'm excited for you and this book. Obviously, you've been very successful in many things, and you've shifted your life many times, from photographer to event host to, mastermind leader to all the things in between, man. And I think it's very, very fascinating. And one question I ask every single guest on the show, I'm going to ask you, it's a 2-part question. The first part is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have a set definition, but it's for me, it's based around family. If I sell 1 million copies of this book, but I'm aloof with my kids, I'm a failure. Simply, they're the most important people in my life. They are the ones that if you want to change the world and you have kids, be a great father, be a great mother type of thing. So it really comes, and be a great husband. So it really comes around that. So I have to check myself with that. This book was a big challenge because when you get into it in the last 3 to 6 months, you are in it and they say things to you and you didn't even hear it because you're looking at this. I hated that part of it. So for me, it's the family side of it. The other stuff, it allows us to live this life, but I've met way too many miserable millionaires to think that money's the answer. And so you get to a certain point, you're like, okay, whatever, that's fine. What's the second part of the question?
What are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Great question. Yeah. First thing I do, and it's such an important part of this, an important part of this message, I call it the hour of giving. Meaning I can get so wrapped up in my goals. Every journal that you have, it's what are you going to accomplish? What are you going to do? The hour of giving is completely different. And that might have been that you asked about the turning point. That might've been the turning point when I started doing that years ago, which is basically I'm spending an hour and it's nothing about me. I'm sending a message to you, to just somebody. I'm leaving reviews for people that I listen to their podcasts, I read their books. I'm connecting people together. It is the most fun hour of my day. Sometimes it's actually 3 or 4 hours. But that gets me started right. That gets not only me doing the things that I need to do and be the person that I need to be, but at the same time, it builds the network like you wouldn't believe. Because you reach out to somebody, see how they're doing, and they go, well, what do you need? I'm like, I don't need anything. I'm like, really? What do you read? I just am checking on you and seeing how you seem like it help. You do that for an hour a day. That is what led to the momentum, the progress of everything we've done the last 5 years, which has been a complete shift. So that's one. Intentional time with our family. I'll be honest with you, things that I'll tell you what I don't do well. I'll do the third ones what I not do well. It's like especially now when I get so wrapped up in the work, physically, I'm not doing the things that I need to be doing in terms of movement, in terms of exercise. And when I do that as the third thing, my mind's straight, I feel great. And I just have to I have to caution myself to not get so caught up in the stuff, to not do all those things physically, to just keep yourself young and keep yourself fresh. So that's the third one that I should be doing, that I will start doing better at.
Yeah, dude, I'll say this. When you said you were 50, I was like, what? I didn't know you were that old. So you're doing something right, man, whether it's genetics or you're moving your body enough to go, okay, I'm staying young. I'm staying on top of my game in some way, shape, or form. That's for sure.
My dad just turned 80. Literally, the book launched on his 80th birthday. It was dedicated to him. And you could see him. He's like, I think we have some genetics, that works in our favor. I think I don't eat sugar. I haven't eaten sugar. I think even at your conference, or maybe the conference that we met at, I'm sitting there watching you guys eat like the dessert, and I'm like, I can't eat that. So I think getting rid of that 5 years ago, for the most part, has really helped. It really is kind of an anti-aging thing. Sugars, and not to get into the health side of it, but cutting out sugar and bread has been a big thing for me, for sure.
Yeah. I'm turning 38 this summer, and I tell people that, and they're like, wait, I thought you were like 32. And I'm like, I'll take that, but it's really genetics. I mean, my grandmother's 92 years old, and she does not look 92. Awesome. So it's a genetics thing. So thank you.
Yeah, but you're doing the right stuff. You're doing the right stuff.
I'm moving my body daily and drinking all the water. You know what? Honestly, man, I get close to, if not hit, a gallon of water a day. And I think that's been really effective with how young I look. Like I look younger because of the water. So anybody, look, here's a beauty tip. Fellas, ladies, drink a gallon of water a day.
They didn't expect coming here with us too, looking for beauty tips, but we gave it to them.
That's how you know it's been a good conversation, for sure, exactly, man. Right. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people find you? How do they grab the book? What's all the good stuff?
Yeah, simple. Our website's totallifefreedom.com. That's where everything that we do is on there. The book's on there. I have a daily podcast, which is fun. It's a short form, 5 to 7 minutes. No intro, no outro, no ads. It's just a simple, to the point podcast. We hit over 1,000 episodes last month, which is cool. And the podcast and the book, you can find it. It's published through KDP, so you can find it Amazon, paperback, hardcover. The audio book is coming out this week, so it's pretty cool.
Awesome stuff, man. Like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the podcast is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
The biggest moment of growth for me, I think there were two. Can I say two? Or I only get one? Okay.
You can say two.
They both came from my dad, and which is funny because I was a terrible kid in my teenage years, because the reason why my dad has gray hairs at 80 is because of me. But at 22 I was floundering. I was, we didn't even get into my past history, but I'd been arrested. I had, all this trouble, kicked out of school. Like I dropped out of college 5 times, all this type of stuff.
Wow.
And so I worked at a convenience store, and I would overcharge the customer. So you talk about like my past, right? Everybody don't hate me for this. This is past life. But it was a drive-through convenience store in New York, and it was so easy because nothing was digital. So we kind of just overcharged and made 50 cents here, pay for lunch. Then all of a sudden, it got big. Like I was making like $100 a day. I was making, I didn't even cash my paychecks. I was making so much cash. It was crazy. So I'm not proud of it now, but it's kind of funny looking back. But what happened was, I woke up in the middle. I moved back in with my parents because it wasn't going well. And I woke up in the middle of the night with a nightmare. And it was an old lady who caught me stealing like 2 months earlier. She found it. And in my nightmare, she pulls up to the drive-thru and she goes, I got you. Like I still see her face. I got you. And I jumped up like in a cold sweat. And I went downstairs and I sat at the kitchen table. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? I'd never asked this. At 22, even though I had failed out of school, it was complete failure, never even questioned it. I'm doing fine. And my dad walks downstairs. And you can imagine my dad's not really pleased with my life at this moment. And I'm living with him. He goes to get a glass of water. And I said to him, Dad, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. He didn't even look at me. He said, well, you like traveling, you like sports, you like taking pictures. Why don't you become a photographer? Be a sports photographer. That's what he said. And I said, is that even a job? And he said, go find out. And he literally went upstairs, went back to bed. Didn't even think about it. So the next day I turn on the TV and I'm looking around. I'm like, oh my God, there's photography. I never thought about who takes the pictures of these games. I go to all the games, never thought about it. So I literally went out, bought a camera, spent $2,000, bought a new camera, and I started buying tickets to baseball games and sneaking down to the front row. I started interviewing the photographers. I found out the security pattern. I would watch the security guards at Yankee Stadium and they would go up, and then so I kind of snuck behind them. I'd sit down, they'd go down to the field, they'd come back when the inning started, and I'd walk down to the front row. Every game I was in the front row by the second inning. And so I'd ask, and I'd always go to the photographers, and I would always ask them questions. Well, that led to me getting an internship with the National Hockey League, Bruce Bennett Studios for the National Hockey League, then Newsday in New York, and then on and on and on, where I wound up winning the William Randolph Hearst National Championship, Best College Photographer, won International Sports Photographer of the Year, all because 22-year career because of that. But 10 years later, here's the second story. 10 years later, my wife and I were working in a newspaper in Indiana, and I had just won that award. I just won International Sports Photographer of the Year. We're about to have a baby. So our 16-year-old was 8. My wife was 8 months pregnant with him. So I go to my boss. Now I need to get my raise. I'm making 32 grand. I can't. My wife wants to stay home with our son. And I go to him for my raise. And he looks at me, reads off all of my accomplishments, all the awards. You go above and beyond all the time, blah, blah, blah. And then he rubbed his eyes and he goes, but I can only give you 3%. And I said, what? So I'm going to make $34,000. I'm not a math major, but I think it's around $34,000. And I said to him, I said, 3% of your salary might be something, but 3% of nothing's nothing. This is my boss that I admire. He worked for Geographic. I walked out of there. I stood under his door frame. I'll never forget. And I said, it's over. It's 10 years into this career. I said, I cannot do this. I can't raise a family like this. So I went home and I called my dad. He had his own business. And I said, Dad, I told him what happened. I said, can I work for you? All I wanted, Justin, was to pay for diapers and formula. Just do a little extra work. Yeah. And he said, no. So even my dad's rejecting me. It's like the worst day of my life. So I'm like, so he said, I've been trying to tell you this. You haven't listened. Maybe you'll listen now. So he got my full attention. I said, what is it? He goes, you have a skill, but you're not using it correctly. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you've become a good photographer. You weren't a good photographer. You worked really hard to get there, but you're settling. You're settling for $32,000 a year in benefits. You could do whatever you want. He said, you could shoot pro sports. You could shoot for magazines, weddings, corporate, anything you want. Income, no limit. Time you can control, and you're settling. And that crushed me, because usually the parents like, get a safe job, get the benefits.
The opposite.
He's the opposite. So I went and I picked up the phone book. I called a bunch of photographers to see if I could work for their business. They all said no, because they saw me in the paper. They didn't want to train their own competition. Made sense. And I took the phone book when there were phone books. Remember those things? And I threw it against the wall. And they're saying, like, if you can't beat them, join them. And I said, sitting in the bathroom floor, I was like, well, if we can't join them, we're going to beat them. And I called my 8.5-month pregnant wife and told her we're starting a business. And she's like, what? We never started a business before. Yeah. And she's like, what? And so we literally went out and shot a couple of free weddings and blah, blah, blah. And 18 months later, it was a 6-figure business. And 18 months after that, we quit our jobs with a paid for house. And all of a sudden it was complete freedom within 3 years. And that was all because of those two things my dad said that were the two turning points in my life.
Dude, I love it, man. What a great story. That's such a great story to hear. Obviously, even just from the standpoint of your dad telling you to go out and risk it all on your own versus, hey, go take the safe route. I love that, man. So, dude, Vincent, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with the audience, and obviously writing this very, very important book, because I often talk about the similar things. Your things put together a lot better than mine. That's why it's a book. But with that being said, man, thank you for putting that on the world, because the world needs to hear that we need to give first. And I think if everybody adopted that, the world would be a better place.
I agree. I appreciate you do that. And I appreciate you. And thanks for this. Has been wonderful.